Fear not, citizens, hope has arrived, for I am here. My name is Avery and it is day 19 of Preptober. My last few videos have been about exploring different plotting methods that you can use to outline your novel, and today we are going to be coming up with a blurb for your novel that is going to get everybody hooked and excited to read it. For anybody who doesn't know what a blurb is a brief summary of a novel that you are most likely to find on the back cover. The job of the blurb is to grab people's attention and get them curious to read more, highlighting the best and most interesting aspects of the book without giving away too many spoilers. Basically, if a person reads your blurb and decides, this book sounds awesome, I want to read it, then it is doing its job. If you're wondering how long your blurb should be, I believe that the average length for a blurb is around 150 words. Could potentially be a bit longer or shorter, but I'd say that anywhere between 100 and 200 words is the golden zone. But what information should you include in your blurb? Well, there are certain key points of information that most blurbs should contain. First of all, what is the tone and the genre of your novel? Now, obviously, you shouldn't just write, this book is a murder mystery in your blurb, but there should be some information in the blurb to indicate that the novel is going to be a murder mystery. Second, characters' names. Definitely don't include too many characters' names in your blurb. We don't need to know the names of every character that's going to appear in your novel, but definitely the protagonist's name and maybe the names of one or two of the other leading characters. And most important of all, your blurb needs to highlight the most interesting part of your novel. What is it about your novel that makes it interesting? What is the hook? What is going to make people decide that more than any other book in the store, your book is the one they want to buy? So let's come up with a random blurb to demonstrate how a blurb might work. Zoe is dead. See, a good way to start your blurb is to use a really gripping hook for the first line. Straight away, it gets the reader interested and it gets them asking questions. So we only have 3 words here and already people will want to know more. They'll want to know, who is Zoe and how did she die? Anyway, back to the blurb. Zoe is dead. She isn't supposed to be here. She's supposed to go to wherever it is people go when they die. But she doesn't know where that is. She doesn't know how to get there. She doesn't even remember being alive. After years of existing in isolation, unseen and ignored by the rest of the world, she has completely given up hope of ever finding where she belongs. Until one day, she sees a photograph in an old school yearbook. A photograph she knows is her own. And so, Zoe haunts the school. Aided only by the strange, quiet boy in the library who can somehow sense Zoe's presence, she must follow the clues to put together the pieces of her life. Who was she? What kind of person was she? How did she die? And most importantly, what must she do in order to move on to the next life? Okay, so this does all the things a blurb needs to do. We know the main character's name, it's Zoe. We know the genre of the novel, it's a mystery. We know the theme of the novel, Zoe is a ghost and she wants to move on to the next life. And we showcase the most interesting aspects of the novel and get the readers wanting to know more. The readers will be asking themselves, who was Zoe? Was she a good person or a horrible person? Is she destined for heaven, hell, or somewhere else? Who is the boy in the library and why is it that he can communicate with her? Most of all, they will probably be wondering how she died. Did she die of natural causes? Was it an accident? Or was it something more sinister? Anyway, I'm not going to do anything with this story, so I'll throw the blurb out as an adoptable for anybody who doesn't have a plot yet. But to give you guys some examples of how to form a well-crafted blurb for multiple genres, I'm going to look at some existing blurbs from popular novels. Let's start with romance first. This is the blurb for The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks, considered by many to be one of the best romance novels of all time. Personally, I saw the movie and I didn't get what all the fuss was about, but maybe the book is a lot better. I don't know, I should really read it sometime. Anyway, the blurb is, Noah Calhoun has returned from war, and in an attempt to escape the ghosts of battle, he sets his mind and his body to restoring an old plantation home to its former beauty. But he is haunted by memories of the beautiful girl he met 3 years before. A girl who stole his heart at a fun fair, whose parents didn't approve, a girl he wrote to every day for a year. When Allie Hamilton shows up on his doorstep, exactly as he has held her in his memory for all these years, Noah has one last chance to win her back. Only this time it's not just her parents in the way. Allie is engaged, and she's not a woman to go back on her promises. The Notebook is the love story to end all love stories. It will break your heart, heal it back up, and break it all over again. So this gives you a very good idea of the tone of the novel. It's a very bittersweet romance. It introduces you to the two main characters, Noah and Allie, and it gets the reader asking questions. What happened to Noah and Allie? Why did they break up? Why is Allie back again? And will Noah and Allie get back together? Now let's look at a blurb for a horror novel. Can't go wrong with Stephen King when it comes to horror. Let's go with The Shining. Danny is only 5 years old, but in the words of old Mr. Halloran, he is a shiner, a glow with psychic voltage. When his father becomes caretaker of the Overlook Hotel, Danny's visions grow out of control. As winter closes in and blizzards cut them off, the hotel seems to develop a life of its own. It is meant to be empty. So who is the lady in room 217? And who are the masked guests going up and down in the elevator? And why do the hedges shaped like animals seem so alive? Somewhere, somehow, there is an evil force in this hotel. And that, too, is beginning to shine. So again, this blurb clearly sets the tone for the novel. It is very eerie, very creepy, very obviously a horror novel. It introduces you to Danny and lets you know that Danny has some kind of supernatural power, and also that the hotel has some kind of supernatural aspect to it. It has an element of mystery to it, and it asks questions that the readers are going to want to know the answers to. And finally, let's look at a blurb for a fantasy novel. We'll go with one of the most popular fantasy novels of our generation, Game of Thrones. In a land where summers can last decades and winters a lifetime, trouble is brewing. The cold is returning, and in the frozen wastes of the north of Winterfell, sinister and supernatural forces are massing beyond the kingdom's protective wall. At the centre of the conflict lie the Starks of Winterfell, a family as harsh and unyielding as the land they were born to. Sweeping from a land of brutal cold to a distant summertime kingdom of Epicurean plenty, here is a tale of lords and ladies, soldiers and sorcerers, assassins and bastards, who come together in a time of grim omens. Amid plots and counterplots, tragedy and betrayal, victory and terror, the fate of the Starks, their allies and their enemies, hangs perilously in the balance, as each endeavours to win the deadliest of conflicts, the Game of Thrones. Now, while I have absolutely nothing negative to say about the Song of Ice and Fire books, except that I wish the next book would come out already, I do have to say I don't think that this is a good blurb for the novel. It doesn't mention any of the characters by their first name. It doesn't mention the murder of Jon Arryn. It doesn't mention Ned Stark being asked to be the Hand of the King. It doesn't mention Bran's fall from the tower. It doesn't actually mention any of the events that occur in the novel. One thing that this blurb does do well, though, is that it throws out a lot of keywords. When writing a blurb, there are lots of exciting keywords that you can throw out that can help you stir the reader's interest. So in this blurb, we have words like sorcerers, assassins, bastards. Royal bastards are a very popular trope in fantasy novels. Plots, counterplots, tragedy, betrayal. Even though the blurb doesn't go into any detail about any of the events that happen in the book, these keywords let the reader know that something exciting is going to happen. Now that we've discussed what makes a good blurb, I'm going to try to put that advice into practice and create a blurb of my own. Just to be clear, this is the novel that I am writing for NaNoWriMo. It is not an adoptable, hands off, it's mine. All right, here we go. Echo was one of the most promising acolytes in the temple until he murdered his mentor. To escape certain execution, Echo and his companions flee to the poverty-stricken slums of the Undercity. There they fall into the clutches of the Undertakers, an underground crime syndicate of thieves, loan sharks, con artists, prostitutes, smugglers, and assassins. Forced into a life of crime, the acolytes must break all of their most sacred vows in order to survive. Try as he might to stay on the moral path, Echo starts to wonder if maybe he was always destined to play the villain. What do you guys think? Is it any good? It's a first draft. I'll probably make some changes when the story's finished, but I'm pretty happy with it for now. So the homework I'm going to give you for today is research popular novels that are in the same genre that your novel is going to be in. Read their blurbs, decide on which blurbs you think are really good, which blurbs make you actually want to read the novel, and which blurbs didn't interest you so much. Have a think about what is it that the good blurbs did that the other blurbs didn't. How did they set the tone for the novel? How do they summarize the characters and events? What keywords did they use that made you want to read more? After you've got a rough idea of what it is that you think makes for a good blurb, then try to use some of those aspects to write a blurb of your own. There is just one more thing that we need to do before we announce our projects, and that is create a Pinterest board and a playlist for your novel. This part is completely optional, but a lot of writers find that having a Pinterest board to refer to is a lifesaver when it comes to writing immersive descriptions of their characters and surroundings, and playlists can really help inspire people to write. But for now, it's goodbye till tomorrow. Once you have finished your blurbs, I would love for you to post them in the comments section. I would be more than happy to review them for you and let you know what parts I think are really good, what parts aren't so good, and suggest some ideas to improve them. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope I see you guys tomorrow.